Howdy folks, this is Nick here, or Pogo, whatever. I'm going to show you how to process a high dynamic range image using a single CR2 file. This is, sometimes you see HDR photography. HDR is short for high dynamic range. But a lot of people seem to abuse it, and they think HDR is when a picture looks like turd. This is not really what HDR is. In this picture, you can see I've got a photo of my car. Yes, piece of shit. Now you can see what kind of man I am, and apparently I'm not much of one. So this is all default settings. I've pulled my CR2 into Photoshop. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn blacks down to 0 because for some reason it wants to crush my blacks. I don't know why. I'm going to turn brightness to 0. I'm going to turn contrast to 0. I'm going to make sure all the other shit is at 0, except I'm going to boost my exposure a bit. And I can see that you guys probably can't see this, but there's a weird kind of magenta cast going on here somewhere. So I'm going to try and adjust tint to, say, -10. Let's try -15. Yeah, let's try -11. Just get rid of that weird pink tint. Digital cameras tend to be too pink. I don't know what it is. It just doesn't look right. Maybe I'm going colorblind or something. Temperature, yeah, I guess that's fairly neutral. I could try adjusting white balance to daylight. It looks a bit more natural, but I kind of like the warmth. I kind of like that extra bit of warmth. So, I'm not going to... This is looking very contrasty. There's no detail in the shadows. There's a lot of blown out highlights here. Yeah, we can't see into these dark levels. It's a very typical digital photograph. So, what are we going to do? Well, we could try turning up fill light, but that really just decreases contrast and brightens the image undesirably. So we're not going to do that. We could also try recovery, which apparently brings some of those highlights down. But it's not really bringing them down. It's actually just flattening them, which I don't like. So we're not going to do that either. So what's the solution? I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this as a TIFF file. I'm going to save it to desktop, deskutopu, as they would say in Japan, I guess. And I'm going to save this as car1. Actually, yeah, I'll do that. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure that my exposure increment is where I want it to be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save an exposure at -1, an exposure at 0, an exposure at 1, and an exposure at 2, and maybe one at 3. And the purpose of this is to combine all of these exposures into a single image so that you get detail in your highlights, as you can see in this exposure, and detail in your shadows that you can see in this exposure. And because this is a RAW file, we're actually adjusting the exposure. We're doing more than just adjusting the brightness and contrast. You can see that at this exposure, we can see the individual highlights on the car, and yet if we go up to +3, we can now see that that's blown out, but we have detail in our shadows. So this is a high dynamic range image. This is a CR2 file, and I think with Nikon cameras, you take NEFs or something like that. So let's go -3. Command S. I'm going to save that out just to my desktop so I know where to find it. I'm going to save this as car1 TIFF file. Save. Okay, then I'm going to go -2. I'm going to save that out as car2. I'm going to go -1. I'm going to save that out as car3. We'll go 0, car4. I haven't picked really the most beautiful photo, have I? If I had a Jag or something, I suppose, make this a little bit more of an interesting stream. Car5 for +1, +2, we'll do car6. There's actually a lot of exposures. +3, we'll do car7. So we've got 7 exposures for one image. Now, I could have taken these by actually adjusting the exposure on my camera, but you don't always have the time. So snapping a single RAW file doesn't give you as much flexibility, but it is a faster way of doing it. So I'm done with that. Go away. I'm now going to hide Photoshop. Wild Bunny joins us. Welcome, 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 friends. Welcome, brethren. Children of the Shire, welcome. I'm now going to go into Enfuse GUI. This is a free HDR blending program that you can use. Rest assured, this color correction window has nothing to do with what I'm doing. It's a live stream thing. So I'm going to literally just drag and drop the exposures I exported, and I'm going to drag them into Enfuse. I'm going to make sure we fuse all of them. I'm going to set my fusing algorithm to value because I find it to be the most natural. And I'm going to go preview. So, at first glance, we can see this is a very unusual looking image. Yes, we have the highlights of the car, we have the blue of the sky, and we have the shadow details. However, the whole thing just looks weird. I don't know what the hell is going on. It's like it has actually created some kind of mask in this area, and then it's created another mask here, and it's brightened that. So it's not really fusing it so much as it is mapping it. I don't really understand why they call it a fuser. Really, it's a mapper like Photomatics or Dynamic Photo. So let's try a different algorithm. Let's try L-star preview. Yeah, still not quite there. It looks very unusual to me. Let's try average. Looks a little bit better. I'm not actually liking this very much. You know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do some manual fusing because this doesn't work for me. I'm going to go back into Photoshop and I'm going to open up that raw file again. Where the hell is it? Uh-oh. For some reason, it's not in my recent. Huh. It's not in my recent thing. Okay. Cool. All right. In that case, I'm just going to open these. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to blend these exposures manually in Photoshop. I think the car side looks pretty good in this picture, so I'm going to open that, which you do by dragging and dropping using the Shift key, and for some reason it's not showing up. Why the hell not? I think it's on my second monitor, which is off. God, this is a good stream, isn't it? Displays, arrangement, gather windows. It still hasn't done it. Okay, so gather windows doesn't gather windows. Well, that makes sense. It's Apple, I guess. Let me turn on my second display so I can get this picture in here. There it is. Whoa, it's so much pinker on this monitor. All right. Yes, the iMac display is anything but accurate. Right, so F to go full screen. I might just go black on the background here. So I like that exposure. The one side of the car looks good. This is not a photo I would bother editing, by the way. This is just for demonstration purposes. Obviously, we've got shadows, details in our shadows in that exposure, so I'm going to pull that in. And if we look at our sky, there's quite a bit of blowing out there. So I'm going to find an exposure that isn't so blown out, like maybe that one. So let's take that exposure, stack it on that exposure, and that exposure, stack it as well. So now we've got, let's unlock the background layer. Now we've got shadow detail, we got midtones, and we got highlights. Now, I'm doing this with a Mac mouse, so bear with me. What am I going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, why does it do that? I'm going to isolate these shadows. I'm going to do it using a polygon lasso, or however you want to pronounce it. I'm going to do maximum feather, 250 pixels. I'm going to take this region here because I want the shadows in that rock. Okay, and then I'm going to do additive selection. Where else have we got shadows? Maybe sort of in this region here. I'm just going to do this very roughly to give you an idea of how you can manually HDR these things. We've also got shadow detail. Actually, you know, there's got to be a better way to do this. There is a better way to do this. better way to do this is literally to just paint out the blown out bits on this layer by erasing it, which will show us the properly exposed bits underneath. So you can see that if I start painting that away, we start getting a bit more of that car, but it starts looking shit. So we need to use a smaller brush. Get some of that back, get some of this exposure back. Just start getting those blown out bits back to where they should be, especially with the sky. The sky is proper blown. As you can see, it's not nearly as fast as using Photomatics or using Infuse HDR, but your results are a lot more controlled. And I do believe that you can achieve superior results going this method. Okay, so all we're doing is we're just trying to save these highlights. The whole picture, it's starting to look better, but it's also starting to look a little bit washed out. So we'll take care of that at some point. So there's our shadow detail. Now here, we've also got blown out bits, but I need to be very careful with this because now we can really start looking quite weird. So I'm going to leave my demonstration there. This looks like an unusual area here. I'm going to go into my vibrance, which just boosts undersaturated colors. I'm going to do a little bit of curving. Just pull things down a bit further and maybe boost the highs a tad, just to give it that little bit of filmic punch. I still think these shadows are a bit underexposed, so you could, I suppose, go into your shadow and highlights, and you could possibly adjust your highlights a bit and maybe boost your shadows a tad. But the more you screw with it, I think the worser it looks. But look, it's not really the best example of photo. Sometimes I like to do like a vignette to get a certain region of the picture to stand out a bit more. Obviously here we have the car standing out, so I use an elliptical feathered selection. And it's just maybe select this region here. And then I invert that selection. And then I literally just curve that outside bit down, which gets you a nicer kind of compositional feel. Sometimes I like to flip it just to get a fresh perspective. Yeah, it looks okay. It still looks very unusual. But it looks better than what it was when we started. We can see that if I hide Photoshop again and I pull up one of these single exposures, you can see how I think we have improved. Why isn't it showing? Work with me, software. There we go. You can see that we have improved it quite a bit. You see, if I was to level this, I'd have to lose these highlights at the top here if I wanted to brighten it to that point. And I still don't have a lot of detail in my shadows. So it's a very contrasty image. So by mapping on our own, you can see that we do get more detail and we do get more color in there. It looks obviously very affected. If I was doing this for real, not live, I'd probably take my time with this and really get it to where I want it to be. But you can see that, we do have some nice improvements. There's more detail in the shadows, there's more detail in the highlights, and that is how we do it. I've just been doing some streams of tracks that I've released and tracks that I'm working on. So definitely check those out in the on-demand section. How the hell do I stop this thing? Thanks very much for watching.